Okay, so they get their name because they do this very characteristic behavior of jumping out of the water and spinning. The record is 7 rotations in one jump. And there's a number of reasons for why they do this, a number of possible theories. It's a form of communication when they are slapping the surface in that way, a way of gaining attention from their colleagues, pay attention to me. Or this jump and this spin can be a way of dislodging any parasites, like remores, which might be attached to the body. When they slap the surface, dislodging them. It could just be overexcitement. They got really, really, really excited about something and they just need to let off a little bit of steam. So they jump. Play, they could just be playing, youngsters in particular, just having a bit of fun. And then there's also maybe the theory of the boys showing off to the girls. Okay, so spinner dolphins, they sleep during the day on the inside of the atoll. And the way they sleep, they will bunch together in a tight formation. And they have to think about breathing. Whales and dolphins have to think about breathing. Unlike us, where it happens just naturally, they have to think about it. So they can't fall asleep completely, otherwise they drown. And they also need to keep an eye out for predators, sharks. Make sure they're not going to swim into a rock or a boat. So what they do is they rest half a brain at a time. They sort of switch off half a hemisphere at a time. And then what you'll also get when they do that, quite typically, is the half of the brain that's awake, that eye's open, and the other eye is closed. So what they'll do when they're in this group, everyone around the outside has that eye open to keep an eye out. After a couple of hours, they'll swap places so they can rest the other side. So they're doing this half a hemisphere at a time. And they'll always put calves in the middle of the group to keep them safe. Again, they can rest for, between 6 and 8 hours a day, almost the same as us. And then around sunset, they will head out of the atoll to go hunt at night. Again, they want these deep water fish and squid, these mesopelagic fish and squid. But because they're too deep for them during the day, they need to wait for night when they rise a little bit towards the surface. And they will dive down to about 300 meters to catch their prey. The record for a spinner dolphin is 600 meters, but they don't do that often, usually between 200 and 300 meters to hunt. So this is why we'll see them traveling out of the atolls around sunset time. Okay, some of the behaviors, so all of these for our spinner dolphins, and the majority of these also for just all of our whale and dolphin species. Acoustics, sound. Sound is the primary method of communication underwater. It's the thing they rely most heavily on. And we've already talked about echolocation, using those high-frequency sounds to navigate and hunt their prey. But they also whistle. Okay, so they whistle. With the dolphins, we can actually hear this underwater. Just little whistles like underwater. And what they found is that each individual dolphin has a signature whistle, like a name. And this is how they can coordinate their hunting. So they can sort of, Bob, you go over there, Jill over there, Sandy, you go over there, and we'll trap our prey. They whistle to communicate using these signature whistles. And this is how mothers and calves will stay together or find each other when they get lost. If they get separated, they'll whistle, call the signature whistle so they can find each other again. And it's really important that mothers and calves stay together. An abandoned calf, a calf on its own, is unprotected, open to attack from sharks, but also possibly from other dolphins. So with our spinner dolphins, for example, they will reproduce every 3 years. They will have a calf every 3 years. So you may have heard this with lions. If a male comes along and kills the calf, then the female can have a child again. She can reproduce again. So males will attack unattended calves. Females, especially with some of the bottlenose, what they figured out, if they mate with multiple males and the male doesn't know if thinks the calf is its father, if he thinks the calf is his, he won't kill it. So that's the female strategy for avoiding calves being attacked and killed. And then they'll also have some whistles which are basically alarm calls. And with our sound, so we have our very high frequency sound, hi, and the very low, I'm not a singer, but very, very low. And it's the low sounds that will travel furthest underwater. So when a blue whale, or even in the case of some of the humpback whales, when they sing at these very low frequencies, they can travel kilometers. With the blue whale, even entire ocean basins. And sometimes what will happen when they let out these sounds, in the water you sometimes get different temperature gradients. And these can act like optic fibers. So the sound will bounce along that temperature gradient and can go for kilometers. The problem, one of the threats that marine mammals face at the moment, whales and dolphins face, is all of the human-introduced noise, or the anthropogenic noise in the marine environment. All the boats, all the drilling, all the seismic surveys, all the sonar, which means their sounds are getting interrupted. They're not traveling as far, so they can't necessarily hear each other anymore. They can't communicate as far as they would like. Tactile communication. This is the touch, the physical contact. The dolphins, you'll see this with the spinners, they'll caress each other with their flippers and with their beaks as well. Mothers and calves will stay in contact a good 80–90% of the time. And what you'll typically see is the calf swimming to the side and just to the back of the mother. This is called echelon swimming. The calf just swims to the back, and they're in physical contact, so the mother always knows that it's there. And we'll get aggressive tactile communication. So when they're annoyed or angry, or they're fighting, we will see them biting each other. They will bite. They will hit each other with their tails, or they'll leap on top of each other, so they're smacking each other. And another thing which they can sometimes do is push others underwater. And there's a few videos of orca hunting the grey whale calves, sort of off California. And what they do is they push the calf underwater to drown it. Now, this is a sign of their intelligence, because it shows that they have a very high level of self-awareness and awareness of other marine animals, to know that, well, they breathe, they need to go to the surface to breathe. I do that, you also do that. So if I hold you underwater, well, then you can't breathe. So they've applied their own self-awareness to another animal and learnt that if they hold that whale underwater, it will drown it and kill it. So it's a sign of intelligence, awareness levels. Visual communication. Sometimes when someone's whistling, they'll let out a few bubbles from their blowhole, just to, so they can identify who's doing the whistling, who's calling the shots. Counter shading. With a lot of our whales and dolphins, their underside is lighter than their back. This is so that when they're swimming and anything is looking up from underneath, maybe some predators are looking up at them, their lighter side just sort of blends in with the surface of the water, the sky, so they're camouflaged a little bit against that background. And we have a lot of aggressive visual communication. Our spinner dolphins, right at the back of their body, just at the start of the tail, there's a little hump. And they have the ability to move their tail from side to side. Usually when they're swimming, it'll be up and down, but they can move it side to side. And this is the same way that fish and sharks will move their tails. So if they do that, maybe there's a predator or something approaching, they'll move their tail from side to side, and it confuses them a little bit. Confuses the predator, hang on a minute, but shark, they get a little bit confused, a way of deterring some predators. Head shaking and opening and closing their mouths, showing their teeth and staring. very aggressive forms of visual communication. And a big one is tail slapping, slapping their tail on the surface of the water. Very distinctive way of showing that they are annoyed. They're getting a little bit aggressive. They'll do this to each other, but sometimes you will see this around boats. And it's their way of saying, I'm very annoyed, like stamping your feet. For animals in the water, if they swim very, very quickly towards the animal, and then they veer off at the last second, that's very, very aggressive behavior.